The scent of pine and cinnamon filled the sprawling estate, mingling with the sharp bite of winter air that seeped through the grand windows. I'd spent the entire morning overseeing the decoration of the ballroom, ensuring every detail was perfect for tomorrow's Christmas gathering. The massive tree stood in the corner, its branches heavy with ornaments that had belonged to Preston's grandmother, each one placed with care that felt almost sacred. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted a silver angel at the top, standing on the ladder in my cream cashmere sweater and dark jeans. 4 years of marriage, and I still felt that flutter of anticipation, knowing Preston would be home soon. He'd been away for 3 days, handling what he'd called urgent business in the city, and I'd missed him with an intensity that sometimes embarrassed me. "Mrs. Castellano, the caterers are here," Sophia, our housekeeper, called from the doorway. Her kind face was framed by gray hair pulled back in her usual efficient bun. "Thank you, Sophia. I'll be right there." I descended the ladder carefully, my mind already running through the checklist for tomorrow's event. The Castellano Christmas Eve dinner was legendary in our circles, a gathering of the families that controlled the city's underworld, all pretending to be respectable citizens for one night of the year. My father would be here, along with my 3 brothers. The thought made me smile, despite the exhaustion settling into my bones. The DeMarco family might be powerful in their own right, but I'd always been the peacemaker, the one who believed that love and loyalty mattered more than territories and power plays. That's why I'd married Preston Castellano 4 years ago, not just because our family's alliance made strategic sense, but because I'd loved him, still loved him, with a fierceness that sometimes frightened me. He was dangerous, ruthless in business, feared by enemies and respected by allies. But with me, he'd always been different, softer, more vulnerable, showing me parts of himself he kept hidden from everyone else. Or so I'd thought. The afternoon passed in a blur of final preparations. I worked alongside Sophia and the staff, tasting dishes, approving wine selections, ensuring the table settings were flawless. Preston's mother had taught me that details mattered in this world, that perfection was expected from the wife of a man like my husband. By the time the sun began to set, painting the snow-covered grounds in shades of amber and rose, I was finally satisfied. Everything was ready. All that was missing was Preston himself. I retreated to our bedroom to change, selecting a deep burgundy dress that I knew he loved, the silk clinging to my curves before flowing to just above my knees. I left my dark hair loose, the way he preferred it, cascading in waves over my shoulders. Diamond earrings, a gift from our 2nd anniversary, completed the look. I was applying lipstick when I heard the front door open, followed by familiar footsteps in the marble foyer below. My heart leaped, and I had to force myself not to run down the stairs like an excited teenager. Instead, I took a steadying breath and descended with measured grace, my hand trailing along the polished banister. Preston stood in the entrance hall, still wearing his charcoal overcoat, snowflakes melting in his dark hair. At 36, he was as devastatingly handsome as the day we'd met, all sharp angles and controlled power, his steel blue eyes capable of cutting through lies and pretense with surgical precision. But something was different tonight. The tension in his shoulders, the hardness in his jaw, the way he barely met my eyes as I approached. "You're home," I said, my smile faltering slightly at his expression. "I was beginning to worry you'd miss tomorrow's dinner." Penelope. My name on his lips sounded wrong, formal, distant. He used my full name so rarely, preferring the endearment Penny that had become his alone. "We need to talk." The words every wife dreads. Ice formed in my stomach as I watched him remove his coat with mechanical precision, handing it to Sophia without his usual thank you. His movements were stiff, rehearsed, as though he'd been practicing whatever came next. "What's wrong?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Did something happen with the business?" "Not exactly. He turned to Sophia. "Leave us, please, and ensure we're not disturbed." She glanced at me with concern, but obeyed, disappearing into the back of the house. The silence that followed her departure was suffocating, broken only by the distant tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Preston moved to his study, and I followed, my heels clicking against the marble in a rhythm that sounded too loud in the quiet house. The study was his sanctuary, all dark wood and leather, smelling of the expensive scotch he preferred, and the cigars he allowed himself occasionally. He poured himself a drink but didn't offer me one, another deviation from normal that set my nerves further on edge. When he finally faced me, his expression was shuttered, unreadable. "I've had my lawyers draw up papers," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "I'm filing for divorce." The words didn't make sense at first. They were sounds, syllables that my brain struggled to arrange into meaning. What? A divorce. He crossed to his desk and retrieved a manila folder, extending it toward me. "I need you to sign these tonight." I stared at the folder as though it were a venomous snake. "Is this a joke?" "Preston, it's Christmas Eve. Our families are coming tomorrow. Which is why this needs to be handled now." He set the folder on the desk between us when I didn't take it. "Before the gathering, before things get more complicated." More complicated? My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "We've been married for 4 years. How does this get more complicated than that?" "Sign the papers, Penelope." The cold command in his voice was one I'd heard him use with business associates, with enemies, but never with me. Never. "No." The word emerged stronger than I expected. "Not until you tell me why. What happened? What did I do?" "This isn't about something you did." He loosened his tie with sharp, angry movements. "It's about what needs to be done. For the business, for the families, for everyone involved. For everyone except me, apparently." Bitterness crept into my voice. "Do I not deserve an explanation? Do 4 years of marriage mean so little that you can just end it without even telling me why?" Something flickered in his eyes, a ghost of emotion quickly suppressed. "The less you know, the better. Trust me on this." "Trust you?" I laughed, the sound harsh and broken. "You're asking me to trust you while destroying our marriage the day before Christmas?" He moved toward me then, and for a moment I thought he might soften, might explain, might give me something to hold on to. Instead, he simply picked up the folder and placed it in my hands. "Sign the papers, Penelope. Tonight. I'll have my lawyers file them after the holidays, but I need your signature now." I looked down at the folder, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. Not yet. Not in front of him. "And if I refuse?" "You won't." His voice was absolutely certain. "Because despite everything, you're a DeMarco. You understand that sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good." The manipulation was so transparent it made me sick. Using my family loyalty, my beliefs about duty and sacrifice, to force my hand. But he was right, damn him. I was a DeMarco. I'd been raised to understand that personal desires sometimes had to be set aside for family, for business, for survival in our world. My hands shook as I opened the folder, seeing my name and his spelled out in legal language that felt like a foreign tongue. Dissolution of marriage, division of assets, standard clauses about no contest and mutual agreement. There was nothing mutual about this. "Do you love someone else?" The question escaped before I could stop it, my voice small and broken. "No." At least he had the decency to sound firm on that point. "This has nothing to do with another woman." "Then what? What could possibly be so important that you're doing this now? Like this?" "Sign the papers." He held out a pen, his face carved from granite. "Please." The please broke something in me. It was the first hint of humanity he'd shown since walking through the door, and somehow that made it worse. He knew what he was doing to me. He knew and was asking anyway. I took the pen with numb fingers. Maybe this was shock, this strange disconnection from my own body as I watched my hand move across the page. My signature, Penelope DeMarco Castellano, appeared in black ink that might as well have been blood for how much it hurt. There. I thrust the folder at him, not caring when papers scattered across his desk. You have what you wanted. I hope it was worth it. I turned to leave, needing to get out before the tears came, before I shattered completely. But his voice stopped me at the door. Penelope, I didn't turn around. Couldn't. This isn't personal. You need to understand that. How can divorce not be personal? I asked the door frame. How can destroying everything we built together not be about us? He had no answer for that. Or if he did, he chose not to share it. I walked out of his study, up the stairs to our bedroom, and only when the door was closed and locked did I allow myself to collapse. The sobs came in waves, tearing through me with a violence that left me gasping. 4 years. 4 years of loving this man, of building a life with him, of believing that what we had mattered. All of it ended on Christmas Eve with papers signed and a husband who looked at me like I was a business transaction to be closed. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and silent, covering everything in white. But no amount of snow could cover this wound, could make this night anything other than what it was. The death of my marriage, and possibly the death of the woman I'd been before I signed those papers. The morning of Christmas Eve dawned gray and cold, matching the numbness that had settled over me like a shroud. I'd barely slept, lying alone in our massive bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to understand what had happened. Preston never came to bed. I heard him moving around the house in the early hours, heard his car leave before dawn, running away from what he'd done perhaps, or simply not caring enough to stay. I forced myself through my morning routine with mechanical precision. Shower, dress, makeup to hide the evidence of my crying. The woman in the mirror looked composed in her elegant black dress, pearls at her throat. She looked like the perfect mafia wife, groomed and graceful and utterly empty inside. The house staff moved around me with careful sympathy, their eyes holding questions they'd never dare voice. Sophia brought me coffee I couldn't drink, pastries I couldn't eat. She squeezed my shoulder once, a brief gesture of comfort that almost broke my composure. Mrs. Castellano, she said softly, whatever is happening, you are stronger than you know. If only that were true. The first guest would arrive at 6. I had hours to pull myself together, to prepare to smile and laugh and play hostess while my world crumbled. The caterers began arriving around noon, filling the kitchen with activity and noise that made my head pound. I supervised mechanically, approving dishes I couldn't taste, ensuring everything was perfect for a celebration I could barely stomach. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Messages from my brothers, asking if I needed anything, if something was wrong. They could sense it somehow, the disturbance in the fabric of our family. But I couldn't tell them. Not yet. Not until I understood it myself. Preston returned at 3, entering through the side door as though trying to avoid me. But I was waiting in his study, seated in the leather chair behind his desk, the signed divorce papers spread before me. He stopped in the doorway, his eyes taking in my position. The papers. The cold fury I'd spent the night cultivating to replace the devastation. Penelope. Don't. I held up a hand. Don't say my name like that, like you care. You gave up that right last night. He moved into the room, closing the door behind him. In the daylight, I could see the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw. He looked as though he'd slept as poorly as I had. Good. The guests will be arriving soon, I continued, my voice hard and controlled. We need to discuss how we're handling this, Do we tell our families tonight? Or do we wait until after the holidays to destroy Christmas for everyone we care about? We're not telling anyone tonight. His voice was firm. Tonight proceeds as planned. Pretending everything is fine? I laughed, the sound bitter. Playing happy couple when you've just filed for divorce? The papers won't be filed until after the new year. He moved to the bar, pouring himself a drink despite the early hour. No one needs to know anything yet. Except me. I stood, gathering the papers into a neat stack. I get to know. I get to smile and serve and play hostess while carrying this secret. How generous of you, Penelope. Stop saying my name. The words exploded out of me. 4 years of being the perfect wife, the peacemaker, the one who swallowed her own needs for everyone else's comfort. You don't get to use my name like it means something to you when you've made it abundantly clear that I don't. He set down his glass with careful precision. That's not true. Isn't it? I circled the desk, stopping a few feet from him, close enough to see the muscle ticking in his jaw, the white-knuckled grip on the glass. Then explain it to me, Preston. Make me understand why my husband of 4 years suddenly wants a divorce so urgent he needs it signed on Christmas Eve. I can't or won't. Both. He met my eyes finally, and I saw something there. Pain, maybe, or regret. But it was buried so deep beneath his control that I couldn't be sure I wasn't imagining it. You have to trust that I'm doing what's necessary. Trust. I tasted the word, found it sour. How am I supposed to trust you when you won't even tell me the truth? Because the truth would put you in danger. The admission came out harsh, frustrated. The less you know, the safer you are. I'm the daughter of Vincent DeMarco. I've been in danger my entire life. I moved closer, close enough to smell his cologne, the scent that had once meant safety and home. Don't patronize me by pretending this is about protection. It is about protection. His hand came up, as though to touch my face. But I stepped back. The rejection made his jaw clench harder. Everything I do is about protecting what's mine. I'm not yours anymore. The words felt like swallowing glass. You made sure of that last night. Before he could respond, footsteps sounded in the hallway. Sophia's voice called out, "Mrs. Castellano, the florist is here with questions about the centerpieces." I moved to the door, pausing with my hand on the handle. I'll play your game tonight, Preston. I'll smile and laugh and pretend everything is fine. But after this is over, after the holidays, I want answers. Real ones. Or I'll make sure our divorce is the least of your problems. The threat was empty, and we both knew it. But it gave me something to hold on to as I walked out, leaving him alone with his secrets and his scotch. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Final preparations, last-minute adjustments, the controlled chaos of preparing for a gathering of the city's most powerful families. I moved through it all like an automaton, responding when spoken to, making decisions, solving problems. But inside, I was screaming. My family arrived first, as was tradition. My father, Vincent DeMarco, still imposing at 65, his silver hair and piercing dark eyes missing nothing. My 3 brothers, Marco, Luca, and Dante, each one more protective than the last. They'd been skeptical of my marriage to Preston at first, concerned about merging our families so completely. But they'd seen how he treated me, how he looked at me, and they'd softened. Now I wondered what they'd think if they knew the truth. Penny baby girl. My father pulled me into a hug, his familiar warmth almost undoing my composure. You look beautiful, but tired. Are you sleeping enough? Wedding preparations for the season, I lied smoothly. You know how it is. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he accepted the explanation. For now. Preston emerged from his study, playing the perfect host, shaking hands and accepting embraces with practiced ease. I watched him work the room as more guests arrived, the Russos and the Benedettis, the Morettis and the Castellis. All the old families, generations of power and influence gathered under our roof. He caught my eye once across the room, his expression unreadable. I looked away, focusing on the conversation with Gabriella Russo, who was regaling me with stories about her granddaughter's first Christmas. Dinner was elaborate, course after course served with precision by the staff I'd trained. I sat at the head of the table opposite Preston, playing hostess with a smile that hurt my face. The conversation flowed around me, business and family, and memories of Christmases past. To Preston and Penelope, my father said, raising his glass. May their union continue to strengthen both our families for years to come. The toast was echoed by everyone at the table, glasses raised, smiles genuine. I lifted my own glass, meeting Preston's eyes over the crystal rim. His expression was carefully blank, giving nothing away. I drank, the wine turning to ash in my mouth. "You've done a beautiful job, dear," Sophia Benedetti said to me. "Everything is perfect. Your mother-in-law would be proud." "Thank you," I managed, thinking of Preston's mother, who'd passed 2 years ago. She'd loved Christmas, had started this tradition of gathering the families. What would she think of her son destroying his marriage on the eve of her favorite holiday? After dinner, as guests mingled in the ballroom with after-dinner drinks and desserts, I slipped away to the library. I needed a moment alone, a moment to breathe without the weight of pretending. I was standing by the window, watching snow fall on the gardens, when the door opened behind me. I didn't need to turn to know it was Preston. I'd learned to feel his presence, the way the air changed when he entered a room. "Quite a performance," I said to the glass. "We should both receive awards." "Penelope." He moved closer, and I could see his reflection in the window, standing just behind me. "I know this is hard." "Hard." I laughed, the sound sharp. "That's one word for it. Do you know what's harder?" Smiling at my father while knowing I'm lying to him. Accepting toasts to our marriage when you've already ended it. Pretending I'm not dying inside while everyone celebrates. It won't be like this forever. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "When this is over." "When what is over?" I spun to face him, anger finally overriding the numbness. "You keep saying that. Keep acting like there's some plan I'm too stupid to understand." "Well, I'm tired of being kept in the dark, Preston. I'm tired of being treated like I'm fragile or naive or incapable of handling the truth." "That's not—" "Mrs. Castellano?" Sophia appeared in the doorway, her timing impeccable as always. "Your brother Marco is asking for you." I moved past Preston without another word, leaving him alone in the library. Marco was waiting in the hallway, his face serious. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "Something's happening with the business. There have been attacks on 3 of our warehouses in the past week. Someone's making a move against the families." Ice formed in my stomach. "Does father know?" "He's in discussions with Preston now." Marco's eyes searched my face. "Are you okay, Penny? You seem off tonight." "I'm fine." The lie came easily now, practiced. "Just tired from all the preparations." He didn't look convinced, but he let it go. "Preston's handling it. He always does. But be careful, okay? Until we know who's behind these attacks, everyone needs to be vigilant." I nodded, my mind racing. Attacks on the warehouses, someone making a move, and Preston asking for a divorce with urgency that made no sense unless it did. The pieces began clicking into place, a picture forming that made my blood run cold. What if the divorce wasn't about us? What if it was about removing me as a target, protecting me by cutting me loose? It was the kind of twisted logic Preston might use, the kind of sacrifice he'd make without consulting me. but it was also the kind of manipulation that proved exactly what I'd accused him of. Using me as a pawn, making decisions about my life without including me, protecting me whether I wanted it or not. I made it through the rest of the evening, smiling and laughing and playing my role. But inside, I was planning. If Preston thought he could protect me by pushing me away, he was about to learn just how wrong he was. Because I was a DeMarco before I was a Castellano, and DeMarcos didn't run from fights. We ended them. The last guest departed around midnight, leaving Preston and me alone in the beautiful wreckage of the party. Candles still burned low, casting shadows across the ballroom. The tree lights twinkled, mocking me with their cheerful glow. Preston stood by the fireplace, still in his tuxedo, staring into the dying flames. I approached slowly, my heels clicking on the marble. "I know what you're doing," I said. He turned, surprise flickering across his face before he controlled it. "What?" "The attacks on the warehouses. Someone making a move against the families." I stopped a few feet from him, close enough to see his eyes widen slightly. "You think divorcing me will keep me safe? Remove me as a target? You think you're protecting me? Penelope? Don't." I held up my hand. "Don't deny it. I can see it in your face. You've always been terrible at lying to me, Preston. It's one of the things I loved about you." "Loved?" He caught the past tense. "You said loved. What else would you call it when you throw away 4 years without even doing me the courtesy of explaining why?" I moved to the window, needing distance. "You made a decision about my life, about our life, without consulting me. You treated me like a pawn to be moved around your chessboard instead of a partner to be trusted. I was trying to protect you. By breaking my heart?" I turned back to him, letting him see the tears I'd held back all day. "By making me sign papers on Christmas Eve, by refusing to explain, by treating me like I'm too weak or stupid to handle the truth. That's not protection, Preston. That's manipulation." He moved toward me, his control finally cracking. "There's a traitor in one of the families, someone feeding information to our enemies, coordinating these attacks. Until I find out who, everyone close to me is in danger, especially you. So you push me away." Understanding and fury warred inside me. "Without asking what I want, without giving me a choice, you just decide my fate and expect me to accept it. What choice is there?" His voice rose. "Would you rather I painted a target on your back? Rather I kept you close while someone plots to use you against me? I'd rather you treated me like an equal." My own voice matched his now. "Like a partner instead of property. Like someone capable of making her own decisions about her own life." We stood there breathing hard. The truth finally laid bare between us. "I can't lose you," he said finally, his voice raw. "If something happened to you because of me, because of this life, I couldn't live with it." "And what do you think you've done?" I asked quietly. "By pushing me away without explanation, by treating me like I don't matter? You've already lost me, Preston. Maybe not physically, but in every way that counts." I walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the frame. "When you're ready to treat me like your wife instead of a piece of property to protect, let me know. Until then, I'll be staying in the guest wing. Penelope, Merry Christmas, Preston." The words felt like goodbye. I left him standing alone in the ballroom, surrounded by the remnants of our perfect celebration. And as I climbed the stairs to the guest wing, I wondered if this was how marriages ended. Not with dramatic confrontations or violence, but with distance growing in the spaces between what was said and what was meant. The snow continued to fall outside, soft and silent, covering everything in white. But some stains, I was learning, couldn't be hidden by snow or time, or even love. Some wounds cut too deep to heal. I woke to pale winter sunlight filtering through unfamiliar curtains. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it all came crashing back. The divorce papers, Christmas Eve, the argument, my exile to the guest wing of my own home, our home. But maybe it had never really been ours. Maybe it had always been his, and I'd just been living in it. I forced myself out of bed, my body heavy with exhaustion despite sleeping past 9. I never slept this late. But then again, I'd never spent half the night crying either, clutching a pillow and trying to muffle the sounds so the staff wouldn't hear. Sophia had left a tray outside my door. Coffee, still hot, and pastries I couldn't imagine eating. But the gesture of kindness made my throat tight, so I took it inside and at least poured the coffee. My phone buzzed with messages from my brothers, checking on me. Christmas Day family dinner was at my father's house this year, a tradition that rotated among us. I'd forgotten about it in the chaos of last night. The thought of sitting through another meal, pretending everything was fine, made me want to crawl back into bed. But DeMarcos didn't hide. We faced our problems head-on. I showered and dressed with care, choosing a deep emerald dress that reminded me of happier Christmases. My mother had loved this color. She'd been gone 10 years now, taken by cancer that had eaten her alive despite the best doctors money could buy. I wished desperately that she were here now. She'd know what to do, how to handle this impossible situation. The house was quiet when I ventured downstairs. Most of the staff had the day off, leaving only Sophia and a skeleton crew for basic necessities. The ballroom had been cleaned, all evidence of last night's gathering erased as though it had never happened. If only my memories could be erased as easily. I found Preston in his study, exactly where I'd expected him. He looked up as I entered, and I saw the same shadows under his eyes that I knew mirrored my own. "We need to talk before I go to my father's," I said, not bothering with pleasantries. He stood, and I noticed he was still wearing yesterday's clothes, his shirt wrinkled, tie discarded. Had he slept at all? "I've been thinking," he started, but I held up my hand. "I've been thinking too. About everything you said last night about protection and danger and traitors. And I understand the logic, Preston. I really do. But understanding doesn't make it hurt less. Penelope." Let me finish. I moved to the window, needing distance. "You say you're protecting me, but you're not. You're protecting yourself, from the guilt you'd feel if something happened to me, from having to make hard choices with me by your side, from treating me like an actual partner instead of something precious you need to keep safe on a shelf. That's not fair, isn't it?" I turned to face him. "In 4 years of marriage, how many times have you included me in your business decisions? How many times have you asked my opinion on matters that affect both of us? How many times have you treated me like an equal instead of something to protect?" His silence was answer enough. "I come from this world, Preston. I grew up in it. My father runs an empire just like yours, and he never hid it from my mother. She knew everything, was consulted on everything. They were partners. That's what I thought we would be. Your mother wasn't targeted by enemies," he said quietly. "She wasn't used as a weapon against your father." "How do you know?" I challenged. "Maybe she was. Maybe that's why my father made sure she knew how to protect herself. Why he trained her in weapons and strategy. Why he trusted her with everything. Because making her ignorant wouldn't have kept her safe. It would have just made her an easier target." The words hung between us. Truth he couldn't deny. "When I married you," I continued, "I thought I was gaining a partner, someone who would share this life with me, who would trust me enough to be honest about the dangers we faced. Instead, I got a husband who makes decisions for me, who hides things from me, who thinks loving me means controlling every aspect of my life. I don't want to control you." His voice was raw. "I want to keep you alive. Then trust me to help you do that." I moved closer, close enough to see the pain in his eyes. Trust me to be strong enough to handle the truth. Trust me to be smart enough to protect myself. Trust me, Preston. Just trust me. I do trust you. He reached for me, but I stepped back. No, you don't. If you did, you wouldn't have ambushed me with divorce papers. You would have come to me and said, Penelope, we have a problem. There's a traitor, and you might be in danger. Let's figure out how to handle this together. That's what partners do. I was trying to protect you from having to make impossible choices. By making them for me? I laughed bitterly. That's not protection, Preston. That's paternalism. And I won't accept it. Not anymore. I walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the handle. I'm going to my father's for Christmas dinner. When I come back, I want you to think about whether you can truly see me as an equal. Because if you can't, then maybe this divorce is the right thing after all. Not because you're protecting me, but because I deserve better than a marriage where I'm treated like a child. His face went pale. Penelope, don't what? Don't want respect? Don't expect to be trusted? Don't demand to be treated like an adult capable of making her own decisions? I met his eyes steadily. Those aren't unreasonable demands, Preston. They're the bare minimum for any partnership. I left before he could respond, before the tears could fall, before I could take it all back and beg him to just hold me and pretend everything was fine. But I was done pretending. The drive to my father's estate took 30 minutes through snow-covered streets. I barely registered the Christmas decorations in shop windows, the families walking together, the joy that should have been part of this day. My father's house was as beautiful as I remembered from my childhood. A sprawling mansion that had housed DeMarcos for 3 generations. The tree in the front window was visible from the street, its lights twinkling in the gathering dusk. Marco met me at the door, taking one look at my face and pulling me into a fierce hug. What happened? Later, I whispered. Please, I can't fall apart yet. He held me tighter for a moment, then released me. We're here when you're ready. The house was warm and loud, filled with family. My brothers and their wives, my father holding court in his favorite chair, nieces and nephews running through the halls. It should have been perfect. It would have been, if my heart weren't breaking. Penny, baby girl. My father rose, concern creasing his weathered face. You look pale. Are you feeling all right? Just tired, Papa. The childhood endearment slipped out, and his eyes softened. It's been a long couple of days. Where's Preston? Dante asked, looking past me as though expecting my husband to appear. He's coming separately? He's not coming. The words felt like swallowing glass. He had business to attend to. The room went quiet. My father's eyes narrowed, and I could see him reading between the lines, seeing what I wasn't saying. Boys, he said quietly, give us the room. My brothers looked like they wanted to argue, but they obeyed, ushering their families out with practiced efficiency. When the door closed, leaving just my father and me, he gestured to the chair beside him. Sit. Tell me what's happened. And I did. Everything spilled out. The divorce papers on Christmas Eve, Preston's refusal to explain, my discovery about the attacks and the traitor, the argument last night. By the time I finished, tears were streaming down my face, and my father's expression had gone from concerned to thunderous. He did what? Vincent DeMarco's voice was deadly quiet, which was always more frightening than when he yelled. He ambushed you with divorce papers without explanation? He says he's protecting me. I wiped my eyes, hating how weak I sounded. There's a traitor in one of the families, and he thinks divorcing me will keep me safe. And did he bother to consult you about this plan? My father's jaw clenched. Did he think you might want a say in decisions about your own life? That's what I told him. I took the handkerchief he offered, pressing it to my eyes. I understand he's trying to protect me, Papa. I do. But I can't live like this, being kept in the dark, having decisions made for me. That's not a marriage. That's not a partnership. My father was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes distant as though remembering something. Your mother and I had a similar fight once, he said finally. When you were just a baby. There was a threat against our family, and I tried to send her away to keep her safe. What happened? She refused to go. A small smile touched his lips. She told me that if I didn't trust her enough to face danger with me, then we had no business being married. She said she'd rather die by my side than live safely alone. What did you do? I apologized. He looked at me directly. And I never made that mistake again. Your mother was my partner in everything, Penny. Every decision, every risk, every challenge. We faced it together. That's what marriage is supposed to be. Preston doesn't see it that way. Then he's a fool. My father's voice was firm. You're a DeMarco. You were raised in this life, trained for it, born to it. You're not some delicate flower that needs to be locked in a tower. You're a warrior. The words warmed something inside me, gave me strength I'd been lacking. Thank you, Papa. As for this traitor business, he continued, his expression hardening, I'll make some calls. If someone is moving against the families, we need to find out who before more blood is spilled. Preston said he's handling it. Preston Castellano is brilliant in many ways. My father stood, moving to his desk. But he has one fatal flaw. He thinks he has to carry every burden alone, solve every problem himself. It makes him strong, but it also makes him stupid, especially when it comes to the people he loves. He has a strange way of showing love. Men often do, baby girl. He pulled out his phone. Especially men like Preston, who've been taught that showing emotion is weakness. But I've seen how he looks at you. He loves you. He's just too much of an idiot to know how to do it right. Despite everything, I laughed. Did you just call my husband an idiot? I called him your husband. My father smiled. That means something, Penny. He chose you. You chose him. That bond is sacred in our world, but it only works if both people are willing to fight for it. I am willing to fight. I stood, feeling stronger than I had in days. But I won't fight alone, and I won't accept being treated like property. Good. He came around the desk, pulling me into a hug. That's my girl. Now, let's have Christmas dinner with the family. And tomorrow, we'll remind your husband that he married a DeMarco, not a doll to be put on a shelf. Mein Dendwer's dinner was exactly what I needed. Surrounded by family, by laughter and love and the warmth of belonging, I felt pieces of myself clicking back into place. My brothers were protective without being suffocating, their wives kind and understanding, their children a beautiful distraction. But as the evening wore on, I found my thoughts drifting back to Preston. Was he alone in that big house, surrounded by the remnants of our celebration? Did he regret what he'd done? Was he thinking of me? I checked my phone obsessively, but there were no messages. Whatever Preston was doing, reaching out to me wasn't part of it. It was after 10 when my father pulled me aside again. I've made some calls, he said quietly, about the attacks and the traitor. I'm hearing whispers that it might be someone close to Preston, someone in his inner circle. Ice formed in my stomach. Who? That's what we're trying to find out. His expression was grim. But Penny, if Preston is trying to protect you by pushing you away, it might not just be about general danger. It might be because he suspects someone in his own organization. Then he needs me even more. The realization hit hard. If he can't trust his own people, if there's a traitor that close, he's more vulnerable than ever, and he's facing it alone. Which brings us back to his fatal flaw. My father squeezed my shoulder. Go home, baby girl. Talk to your husband. Make him understand that protecting you means trusting you, not pushing you away. What if he won't listen? Then you make him listen. You're a DeMarco, Penny. We don't give up on the people we love. We fight for them, even when they're too stupid to fight for themselves. The drive home felt longer than it had that morning. My mind raced with possibilities, scenarios, words I would say to make Preston understand. But when I pulled up to our house, I found it dark, except for a single light burning in the study. He was still there, still working, still carrying the burden alone. I let myself in quietly, moving through the darkened house to the study. The door was ajar, and I could see him hunched over his desk, papers spread before him, a glass of scotch forgotten at his elbow. He looked up as I entered, and the expression on his face nearly broke me. Relief and fear and longing all mixed together. Penelope. We need to talk, I said, closing the door behind me. Really talk. No more secrets, no more manipulation, no more protection disguised as love, just honesty. He stood slowly, like a man bracing for a blow. Okay. I know there's a traitor close to you. I moved to stand before his desk. My father has sources too, and I know that's why you're really pushing me away. Because you can't trust your own people, and you're terrified I'll get caught in the crossfire. His jaw clenched. If I can't protect my own wife, I don't need you to protect me from everything, Preston. I need you to trust me enough to protect myself, to give me the information I need to be smart about the danger. I leaned forward, palms flat on his desk. You want to keep me safe? Tell me who you suspect. Let me help you figure this out. Let me be your partner instead of another problem you have to solve. What if I make the wrong choice? His voice cracked. What if I trust you with this, and something happens to you because of it? I couldn't live with that, Penelope. I couldn't survive losing you. And what about me? I asked quietly. Can I survive being married to a man who doesn't trust me? Who makes decisions about my life without consulting me? Who treats me like I'm fragile when I'm strong? I paused. I'm a DeMarco, Preston. I was raised for this life. Trained for it. I'm not some civilian you picked up off the street. I'm your wife, and I deserve to be treated like one. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the war happening behind his eyes. The need to protect versus the need to trust. Control versus partnership. Finally, he moved around the desk, stopping inches from me. You're right, he said, the admission seeming to cost him something. About all of it. I've been trying to protect you by keeping you ignorant, and all I've done is hurt you. Push you away when I need you most. Then stop pushing. I reached up, cupping his face. Let me in, Preston. Let me help you. Let me be what I've always wanted to be. Your partner. His hands came up to cover mine, and I felt them shaking slightly. I'm scared, he admitted, the vulnerability in his voice something I'd rarely heard. I'm terrified of losing you. Then don't push me away. I stood on tiptoe, pressing my forehead to his, because that's the fastest way to lose me. Not danger, not traitors, not enemies. Just you, refusing to let me stand beside you. I'm sorry. The words were rough, broken. God, Penelope, I'm so sorry. The divorce papers, the way I handled it, all of it. You deserved better. You deserved honesty and respect and trust. Yes, I did. I didn't sugarcoat it. You hurt me, Preston. Badly. And that's not something that can be fixed with an apology. I know. He pulled back slightly, meeting my eyes. So what do we do now? Now? I I considered the question. Now you prove it. You prove that you've learned, that you understand what I need from this marriage. You include me in everything. You trust me with the truth, even when it's ugly. You treat me like an equal. And if I do all that? His voice held a note of hope. Is there a chance you can forgive me? Maybe. I stepped back, creating distance. But Preston, forgiveness takes time, and it requires you to actually change, not just promise to change. So I'm going to need to see it, consistently, before I'm willing to tear up those divorce papers. Understanding dawned in his eyes. You're keeping them. I'm keeping them, I confirmed. As a reminder to both of us, of what happens when you don't treat me as a partner, of how close we came to losing everything. Consider them motivation. A small smile tugged at his lips despite the seriousness of the moment. You're giving me a second chance. I'm giving us both a second chance. I moved to the door. But I'm sleeping in the guest wing until you've proven I can trust you again. And I want to know everything about this traitor situation. Tomorrow. Full briefing. No holding back. Tomorrow, he agreed. Everything. I promise. Good. I paused in the doorway. And Preston, if you ever ambush me with legal papers again without discussing it first, I'll make you regret being born. Are we clear? Crystal. And despite everything, he was smiling. A real smile that reached his eyes. Good night, Penelope. Good night. I paused. And Merry Christmas. Even if it's a day late and completely ruined. We'll make next year better, he said quietly. I swear it. I left him standing in his study, surrounded by his secrets and his fears. But for the first time since Christmas Eve, I felt hope. Not that everything would be fixed easily or quickly, but that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. If Preston was willing to meet me halfway. True to his word, Preston called a meeting the next morning. I woke to find a message from him slipped under my door. War room. 10 a.m. Come prepared. The war room was what we called the conference space in the basement. Soundproof, secure, where the real business of the family was conducted. I'd been in it only a handful of times in 4 years of marriage, always as an observer, never a participant. That was about to change. I dressed carefully. Black slacks, silk blouse, my hair pulled back in a severe bun. I wanted to look professional, competent, every inch the mafia princess I'd been raised to be. Not Preston's wife, but Vincent DeMarco's daughter. When I descended the stairs at precisely 10, I found Preston waiting outside the door. He'd dressed similarly. Charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, looking every inch the powerful boss he was. Thank you for coming, he said formally. Thank you for inviting me. I matched his tone. We were both testing this new dynamic, figuring out how to be partners instead of husband and wife playing roles. He opened the door, revealing the room beyond. A large table dominated the space, currently covered in files, photographs, and what looked like surveillance reports. 2 men I recognized as Preston's most trusted captains, Alessandro and Marcus, stood when we entered. Gentlemen, Preston said, you know my wife, Penelope. Mrs. Castellano. They both nodded respectfully. From now on, Penelope will be included in all strategic discussions, Preston continued, his voice leaving no room for argument. She's not just my wife, she's my partner in this operation. Is that understood? I saw surprise flicker across their faces, but they were too well trained to question. Understood, boss. We sat, and Preston began laying out the situation. 3 warehouses hit in the past 2 weeks, each attack precisely timed to cause maximum damage with minimum casualties. Whoever is behind this knows our operations intimately, he explained, pointing to a map where the warehouses were marked with red pins. They know our schedules, our security protocols, our blind spots. Inside job, I said, studying the pattern. Someone with high-level access. That's what I think. Preston pulled out photographs. These are the only people with that level of clearance. I examined the faces. Men I'd met at gatherings, at dinners, at the wedding 4 years ago. Some I knew well, others barely at all. What's the common thread? I asked. What connects the attacked warehouses specifically? Alessandro leaned forward. They all handle the same shipments. High-value imports from our European connections. And who manages those European connections? Preston's jaw tightened. Antonio Russo. My stomach dropped. Antonio, who'd laughed and joked at our Christmas Eve gathering, whose wife Gabriella had complimented my decorations, who'd known Preston since they were boys. You suspect Antonio? The betrayal would be devastating if true. I don't want to. Preston's voice was strained. But the evidence points in his direction. Every attacked warehouse was under his oversight. Every security breach occurred on his watch. Evidence can be manufactured, I pointed out. If someone wanted to frame Antonio, this would be the perfect way to do it. Turn Preston against one of his oldest allies. The 3 men stared at me. Preston slowly smiled. I've been so focused on the obvious pattern, I didn't consider it might be deliberately obvious. So the question becomes, I continued, warming to the analysis, who benefits from turning you against Antonio? Who gains if the Castellano and Russo families are at war? The Benedettis, Marcus said suddenly. They've been pushing to expand into the port operations. If we're fighting with the Russos, we're too distracted to notice them making moves. Preston pulled out another file. Marco Benedetti has been unusually quiet lately. No expansion, no new ventures. Almost like he's waiting for something. Or preparing for something, I added. I looked at the map again, at the pattern of attacks. What if the warehouses aren't the target? What if they're the distraction? Explain. Preston leaned forward, giving me his complete attention. You've been so focused on protecting the warehouses, on finding the traitor, that you're vulnerable elsewhere. Where's your attention not focused right now? Understanding dawned in his eyes. The Christmas gathering. Every family in one place. Guards pulled to protect the warehouses instead of the estate. If someone wanted to make a move against multiple families at once, they just got the perfect opportunity, I finished. With everyone in your home, under your roof, ostensibly under your protection. If something had happened that night, it would have destroyed me, Preston said quietly. Destroyed all the alliances, all the trust. The families would have turned on each other, blamed each other. Exactly. I pulled the photographs of the Christmas gathering that Preston had commissioned. Standard practice, documenting who attended major events. So the question is, who was conspicuously absent? Or who brought unusual numbers of their people? We spent the next 2 hours going through guest lists, security logs, and attendance records. And slowly, a picture emerged. Marco Benedetti had brought twice his usual number of guards, claiming he'd received threats. Several of his key lieutenants had been positioned strategically throughout the house, and his wife Teresa had spent an unusual amount of time asking questions about the estate's security, disguised as compliments about the beautiful property. It was a reconnaissance mission, Alessandro said grimly. They were mapping the house, identifying weaknesses, planning an attack. But it didn't happen, Preston pointed out. Something stopped them. We all turned to look at each other. Then I remembered. The divorce papers. You asking me to sign them that night. Everyone saw me leave the study upset, saw the tension between us. The whispers started immediately. So they thought I was distracted, Preston continued. Vulnerable because of personal problems. Maybe they decided to wait for an even better opportunity. Or maybe, I said slowly, someone warned them off, told them it was a trap, that you suspected something. A double agent. Marcus's eyes widened. Someone playing both sides. Preston was already pulling out his phone. I need to make some calls. Gentlemen, I want surveillance on Marco Benedetti and everyone in his organization. Round the clock. I want to know what they're planning before they make their move. As Alessandro and Marcus left to implement the orders, I remained seated, studying the evidence spread before us. Preston ended his call and turned to me. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing what I couldn't. For asking the right questions. For being exactly what I needed you to be." "I'm just doing what I should have been allowed to do all along," I replied. But there was less heat in my voice than before. Working with him like this, being treated as an equal, it felt right in a way our marriage hadn't for a long time. I was an idiot. He moved around the table to stand beside me. "Trying to protect you by keeping you out, when including you made us both stronger. Yes, you were an idiot. I didn't soften it. But you're learning. That's something." "Penelope." He crouched beside my chair, bringing himself to eye level. "I know I've broken your trust. I know an apology isn't enough. But I want you to know that this..." He gestured at the war room, at the evidence of our collaboration. "This is how it's going to be from now on. No more secrets. No more decisions made without consulting you, partners in everything." "Words are easy, Preston." I met his gaze steadily. "Prove it with actions." "I will." He stood, offering me his hand. "Starting now. I have a meeting with Antonio Russo in an hour. I want you there." I took his hand, let him pull me to my feet. "To do what?" "To read him. You're better with people than I am, Penelope. You see things I miss. If Antonio is the traitor, you'll spot something. If he's being framed, you'll see that too." It was a test, I realized. Not of my abilities, but of his commitment to trusting me. He was putting me in a position of real authority, real responsibility. "Okay," I said. "I'll be there. But Preston, if I say something in that meeting, if I call something out that you disagree with, you can't undermine me. Not in front of Antonio. We have to present a united front." "Agreed." He didn't hesitate. "Whatever you say in that room, I'll back you. Completely." "Oh, aye." Antonio Russo arrived at noon, his usual jovial demeanor somewhat subdued. He embraced Preston warmly, then turned to me with genuine surprise. "Penelope, I didn't expect to see you at a business meeting. Everything all right?" "Everything's fine, Antonio." I smiled, gesturing to the sitting room where we'd arranged comfortable chairs instead of the formal conference table. Making this feel casual, friendly, Preston and I decided it was time I took a more active role in family business. "I hope you don't mind." "Mind? Not at all." But I saw the calculation in his eyes, the quick assessment of what this change might mean. Gabriella's been telling me for years that the wives should be more involved. Says we men miss half of what's happening because we're too focused on the obvious. "Gabriella is a wise woman," I said, settling into my chair. Preston sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. "United front." "So," Antonio said, accepting the glass of scotch Preston offered. "What's this meeting about? Your call sounded urgent." "The warehouse attacks," Preston said directly. "I need your help figuring out who's behind them." I watched Antonio's face carefully. Surprise, followed by confusion, then genuine concern. "I thought you suspected me," he said bluntly. "All the attacks have been on my watch. If I were you, I'd suspect me too." The honesty was disarming. I glanced at Preston, saw him reassessing. "Why would I betray you?" Antonio continued. You and I have been friends for 30 years, Preston. Our fathers worked together. Our families are bound by blood and loyalty going back generations. What could anyone offer me that would be worth throwing all that away? Nothing, I said quietly, and both men turned to look at me. Which is exactly the point. Someone is trying to frame you, Antonio. Make Preston think you've turned, destroy your friendship, break the alliance between your families. Understanding dawned in Antonio's eyes. So the attacks weren't just about the merchandise. They were about turning Preston against me. That's what we think. Preston leaned forward. Which means we need to find out who benefits from the Castellano and Russo families at war. The Benedettis, Antonio said immediately. Marco's been quiet lately, too quiet. And his wife was asking a lot of questions at your Christmas gathering. Gabriella mentioned it to me, thought it was odd. What kind of questions? I asked. About the security systems, the layout of the house, how many guards you employ. Antonio's expression darkened. At the time, I thought she was just curious. But now it looks like reconnaissance. Preston finished. We spent the next hour sharing information, building a complete picture of Marco Benedetti's movements over the past months. Small things that hadn't seemed important individually, but together formed a pattern of preparation and planning. He's going to make a move soon, Antonio said grimly. All this preparation, all this manipulation, it's building to something big. Then we need to be ready, Preston replied. And we need to turn his plan against him. After Antonio left, with promises to coordinate our security and intelligence gathering, I found myself alone with Preston in the sitting room. He poured 2 glasses of wine, handing me one. You were brilliant in there, he said. The way you read Antonio, the questions you asked, the connections you made. You saw what I needed to see. I told you I could help. I sipped the wine, letting the warmth spread through me. If you'd just trust me. I'm learning to. He sat beside me, closer than necessary. Not touching, but his presence tangible. It's hard, Penelope. Trusting anyone in this world. We're taught from birth that everyone has an agenda. Everyone can be bought or manipulated. Love is seen as weakness. Is that why you pushed me away? I asked quietly. Because loving me felt like weakness? Loving you is the only real thing in my life. His voice was raw with honesty. Everything else is games and manipulation and strategic alliances. But what I feel for you, it's real. It's pure. And the thought of losing it, of losing you, it terrified me into making the stupidest decision of my life. I set down my wine glass, turning to face him fully. You won't lose me by trusting me, Preston. You'll lose me by trying to control me, by making decisions about my life without consulting me, by treating me like I'm fragile when I'm strong. I know that now. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his hand cupped my face with heartbreaking gentleness. And I swear to you, I'll spend the rest of our lives proving that I've learned, that you can trust me to be a real partner. Good. I leaned into his touch, allowing myself this small comfort. Because I meant what I said. The divorce papers stay until you prove it. Consistently. Over time. How long? He asked. How long do I have to prove myself before you'll tear them up? As long as it takes. I pulled back slightly. This isn't a test with a set timeline, Preston. This is our marriage, our future. And I need to know that the changes are real, not just words you're saying to get me back. Fair enough. He stood, offering me his hand. Then I'd better start proving it. Starting with dinner. I've arranged for us to eat together tonight. In the dining room. Not as husband and wife playing roles, but as partners discussing strategy. I took his hand, let him pull me to my feet. Partners discussing strategy. I like the sound of that. Good. His smile was genuine. Because I've realized something, Penelope. We're stronger together than we ever were apart. And if we're going to survive what's coming, if we're going to protect our families and our lives, we need to do it as a team. A team, I echoed. Not me following your orders. Not you following my orders, he agreed. But both of us, working together, combining your strategic mind with my experience, your people skills with my connections, equal partners. It was what I'd wanted all along, what I'd dreamed our marriage could be. But words were easy. Actions would prove whether this change was real. As we walked to the dining room together, his hand warm in mine, I felt a cautious hope building. We had a long way to go. Trust to rebuild, wounds to heal, patterns to break. But for the first time since Christmas Eve, I believed it might actually be possible. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm I'd never experienced in our marriage. Every morning, Preston and I met in his study to review intelligence reports and coordinate with our allies. Every afternoon, we strategized together, planning our response to the Benedetti threat. Every evening, we dined together, discussing not just business but life, dreams, fears we'd never shared before. It was strange, this partnership we were building. More intimate in some ways than our marriage had ever been, even as I still maintained my distance, still slept in the guest wing, still kept those divorce papers as a reminder. But slowly, day by day, I was beginning to see the changes I'd demanded. The Benedettis are moving shipments through the eastern docks, Preston said one morning, pointing to surveillance photos spread across his desk. Large shipments, more than their normal operations would require. Weapons? I suggested, studying the crates being loaded. That's my guess. He frowned. But for what? They're already well armed. This is excessive. I pulled up the calendar we'd been maintaining, tracking all of Marco Benedetti's activities. What's the date on those photos? January 10th. Why? Because on January 15th, there's a gathering of all the families, the annual New Year's Council meeting at the Rossini estate. I looked up at him. Neutral ground, where we discuss territory and disputes. Every boss will be there with minimal security, per tradition. Preston's face went pale. He's planning an attack. Not just an attack. I stood, pacing as the pieces clicked into place. Think about it. Every boss in one place, underguarded because of tradition and mutual agreement. If the Benedettis hit during that meeting, they could eliminate the leadership of every major family in one strike and step into the power vacuum. Preston grabbed his phone. We need to warn the others. Wait. I put my hand over his. If we warn them, the Benedettis will know we've uncovered their plan. They'll move up their timeline or change tactics. So what do? Let them walk into a trap? No, I thought quickly. We let the Benedettis think their plan is working, but we prepare a counterstrike, turn their trap against them. Preston stared at me. That's risky. If something goes wrong, then we handle it together. I met his eyes steadily. As partners, you wanted to prove you trust me? This is how. Trust my plan. Trust my judgment. Trust that I know what I'm doing. I could see the war happening behind his eyes. The instinct to protect warring with the commitment to trust. Finally, he nodded. Okay, we do it your way. What do you need? Over the next 4 days, we worked in absolute synchronization. I coordinated with my father and Antonio, bringing them into the plan without alerting the other families. Preston arranged for hidden security at the Rossini estate, disguised as waitstaff and grounds crew. We planned every detail, every contingency, every possible way the night could go wrong, And through it all, I watched Preston. Watched how he consulted me on every decision, asked my opinion, valued my input. Watched how he presented my ideas to others as if they were his own, then corrected them to give me credit. Watched how he was learning, truly learning, to be a partner instead of a protector. The night before the council meeting, I found him in his study, staring at the wall of family photographs. Our wedding photo held pride of place, two young people smiling with the certainty that love conquered all. How naive we'd been. Having second thoughts? I asked from the doorway. He turned, his expression vulnerable. About the plan? No. Your strategy is sound. But about tomorrow, about the risk you're putting yourself in by being there. He stopped, shook his head. I'm terrified, Penelope. The thought of losing you. You won't lose me. I moved into the room. We'll be prepared. We'll be smart. And we'll be together. I wish I could just lock you away somewhere safe. The admission was raw. Keep you out of danger entirely. But you won't, I said quietly, because you've learned that keeping me out doesn't keep me safe. It just keeps me ignorant. I have learned that. He crossed to me, stopping just close enough that I could feel his warmth. These past 2 weeks, working with you like this, it's shown me what we could have been all along. What we should have been. What we will be, I corrected, if we both keep choosing it. His hand came up, cupping my face with that gentle possessiveness that still made my breath catch. I know I don't deserve it, but I need to ask. When this is over, when we've dealt with the Benedettis, will you give me another chance? A real one? I'm already giving you a chance, I pointed out. Every day that I stay, every day that I work with you, I'm choosing to give us a chance. I mean, really give us a chance. His thumb traced my cheekbone. Move back into our room. Let me court you properly this time. Let me show you the husband I should have been from the start. My heart hammered against my ribs. Preston, I'm not asking for an answer now, he interrupted gently. I'm just asking you to think about it. After tomorrow, after we've proven we can work together in the highest stakes situation imaginable, think about whether you can forgive me enough to try again. Okay, I whispered. After tomorrow, I'll think about it. He leaned down, his forehead resting against mine. We stood like that for a long moment, breathing together, drawing strength from each other. Whatever happens tomorrow, he murmured, know that I love you. I've always loved you. I just didn't know how to love you right. I love you too. The admission came easier than expected. Even when I wanted to hate you, when I was so angry I could barely see straight, I never stopped loving you. Then we have something to build on. He pulled back slightly, his eyes searching mine. Love and respect and trust. The foundations of a real partnership. We do, I agreed. Now we just have to survive tomorrow to build on them. The Rossini estate glittered under January stars, its ballroom filled with the city's most powerful criminals, all pretending to be respectable businessmen. I stood beside Preston, wearing a stunning navy gown that Gabriella Russo had insisted I borrow, and played the perfect mob wife. But underneath the polish and poise, I was coiled tight, ready for action. The meeting proceeded normally. Territory disputes discussed and resolved, agreements ratified, alliances reaffirmed. Marco Benedetti sat across the room, his expression pleasant, giving no indication that his men were positioned outside, armed and ready to attack. He had no idea we were ready too. The attack came at precisely 10 p.m., just as we'd predicted. Benedetti's men stormed the ballroom, weapons raised, clearly expecting to catch everyone off guard. Instead, they found themselves surrounded by our hidden security, guns trained on them from every direction. Drop your weapons. Preston's voice rang out, cold and absolute. Now. Marco Benedetti's face went from triumphant to shocked to furious in rapid succession. You knew. We knew, I confirmed, stepping forward. Did you really think you could frame Antonio, manipulate Preston, and attack every family without us figuring it out? You. Marco's eyes narrowed. This was your doing. This was our doing, Preston corrected, moving to stand beside me. United front. My wife is brilliant, Marco. Smarter than both of us combined. You should have factored that into your plans. The standoff lasted only minutes. Benedetti's men, realizing they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered, dropped their weapons. And Marco Benedetti, his empire crumbling around him, could only watch as he was taken into custody by men he'd thought were his allies. What happens to him? I asked Preston later, as we stood on the Rossini terrace, watching police lights fade into the distance. The families will decide, he replied. Probably exile if he's lucky. Death if he's not. And us? I turned to face him. What happens to us? He pulled something from his pocket. An envelope, worn at the edges from being carried. I've been carrying these since the day you signed them, he said, offering me the divorce papers, waiting for you to tell me what to do with them. I took the envelope, feeling its weight. 4 weeks ago, these papers had represented the end of everything. Now they represented a choice. I think, I said slowly, that I'd like to burn them, if you're willing. Hope blazed in his eyes. Are you sure? No, I admitted. I'm terrified. Terrified of trusting you again, of opening myself up to being hurt. But I'm more terrified of losing what we've built these past weeks. This partnership, this team. I want to keep building on it, Preston. I want to see what we can become if we both keep choosing each other. He produced a lighter, his hands shaking slightly as he held it up. Together. I held the envelope over the terrace railing. He flicked the lighter. Together we set the papers on fire, watching them burn and curl and turn to ash that the wind carried away into the night. No more divorce, he murmured. No more distance. Just us, working together. Just us, I agreed, and let him pull me close. Let myself sink into his embrace for the first time in weeks. It felt like coming home. The weeks following the Benedetti takedown were a revelation. Preston didn't just include me in his business. He actively sought my input, valued my perspective, deferred to my judgment on matters involving people and relationships. We were building something new, something stronger than what we'd had before. But it wasn't perfect. We still argued, still clashed when our approaches differed. The difference was that now we talked through it, compromised, found solutions together. I'd moved back into our bedroom 2 weeks after burning the divorce papers, though I'd made it clear that this was a trial. We were rebuilding trust, not pretending the past hadn't happened. And slowly, painfully, beautifully, we were falling in love all over again. There's a problem, Preston said one morning in late February, his voice tense in a way that immediately put me on alert. What kind of problem? Your father. He pulled up security footage on his laptop. He's been receiving threats. Someone's targeting the DeMarco family operations, and they're being very specific about it being retaliation for your father's role in taking down the Benedettis. Ice formed in my stomach. Marco's allies? That's what we think. There's a faction that believes the Benedettis were treated unfairly, that Marco was set up. They're looking for revenge. My mind raced through scenarios, implications, dangers. My father won't hide. You know that. He'll see it as weakness. I know. Preston's jaw was tight, which is why I'm going to him. To offer additional security, to coordinate our resources, to make sure he's protected. We're going to him, I corrected. Together. He looked at me for a long moment. It could be dangerous, Penelope. Walking into a situation where we know there's an active threat, which is exactly why I need to be there. My father might refuse your help out of pride, but he won't refuse me. I stood, already planning. We go together. We present a united front, and we make sure my family is safe. That's what partners do. Something shifted in his expression. Pride, maybe. Love, definitely. You're right. We go together. The meeting with my father didn't go as planned. We arrived to find the DeMarco compound in lockdown, security doubled, everyone on high alert. And in the middle of the chaos, my father planning a counterstrike against the faction threatening his family. "Papa, no," I said when he explained his plan. "That's exactly what they want, for you to retaliate, to start a war that will weaken both sides." "And what would you have me do?" His voice was hard. "Let them threaten my family? Let them think the DeMarcos are weak?" "Let us handle it," Preston said quietly. "The threat is against your family because of your alliance with me, because of your role in taking down Marco. That makes it my responsibility." "Your responsibility?" My father's eyes narrowed. "My daughter's safety is not your responsibility, Castellano. She's my blood." "She's my wife," Preston replied, his voice firm but respectful, "which makes her safety as much my responsibility as yours. And I'm asking you to trust me to protect her, to protect all of you." They stared at each other. Two powerful men not accustomed to backing down. I could see the testosterone-fueled standoff about to escalate into something ugly. "Enough," I said, stepping between them. "Both of you. This isn't about whose responsibility I am. I'm my own person, capable of making my own decisions. And right now, I'm deciding that we need to work together, not argue about who gets to protect me." My father's expression softened slightly. "You've changed, Penny." "I've grown up," I corrected. "Become the woman you and Mama raised me to be. Strong, smart, capable of standing on my own while still accepting help when it's offered. That's what you taught me." "Your mother would be proud," he said quietly, and I saw tears in his eyes. "I'm proud." "Then trust me." I took his hand. "Trust us. Let Preston and I handle this threat together. We've proven we can work as a team. Let us prove it to you." What followed was 3 weeks of careful planning, strategic coordination, and nerve-wracking waiting. We set a trap for the faction threatening my father, using myself as bait in a way that made Preston's protective instincts go crazy, but which he ultimately agreed was the smartest play. The night of the operation, everything went according to plan. Almost. The faction took the bait, believing I was vulnerable at a charity event in the city. They made their move, trying to grab me as I left through a side entrance. But Preston's men were waiting, hidden, ready. Except one of the faction members panicked, drew a gun, aimed it not at me, but at my father, who'd insisted on being part of the protective detail despite our protests. Everything slowed down. I saw the gun rise, saw my father frozen in the spotlight, saw death approaching the man who'd given me life. And then Preston was moving, throwing himself between the gun and my father, taking the bullet that had been meant for Vincent DeMarco. The chaos that followed was a blur. Gunfire, screams, men falling, my father's security taking down the faction members, our trap springing closed around them. But all I could see was Preston, crumpled on the ground, blood spreading across his white shirt. "No," I breathed, falling to my knees beside him. "No, no, no, Preston, stay with me." His eyes fluttered open, pain clear in their depths. "Your father is fine," I sobbed. "You saved him. You idiot, you beautiful idiot, you saved him. Had to. His hand found mine, grip weak. He's your family. Had to protect him. Had to protect you. You're my family too, I cried, pressing my hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. You're my husband, my partner, my everything. You can't leave me, Preston. Not now, not when we're finally getting it right. Love you, he whispered. Always loved you. I love you too. The words were a prayer, a plea. So you have to stay. You have to fight. Please, Preston. Please. The hospital waiting room became my world for the next 18 hours. My father sat beside me, his hand gripping mine, tears streaming down his weathered face. He saved my life, he kept saying. Took a bullet meant for me. I know, Papa. I was numb, beyond crying, beyond anything except waiting and praying and bargaining with a God I wasn't sure listened to people like us. My brothers came, their wives, bringing coffee I couldn't drink and comfort I couldn't accept. Antonio Russo arrived with Gabriella, both of them pale with worry. Preston's captains filled the hallway, a silent honor guard for their boss. And through it all, I waited. Finally, after an eternity, a doctor emerged. Mrs. Castellano? I stood on legs that barely supported me. Yes? Your husband is stable. The bullet missed his heart by inches, but caused significant damage to his lung. He's going to need extensive recovery time, but he should make a full recovery. The relief was so intense I nearly collapsed. My father caught me, held me up. He's going to be okay, I whispered. He's going to be okay. You can see him, the doctor continued, but only briefly. He's still very weak. Preston looked small in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines and tubes and monitors that beeped with reassuring regularity. But when I entered, his eyes opened, focusing on me with such love that my breath caught. Penny, he murmured. I'm here. I took his hand carefully, avoiding the IV lines. I'm right here. Your father? Is fine. You saved him, Preston. You were willing to die to protect my family. Your family is my family. His grip on my hand tightened slightly. That's what marriage means, what partnership means. You proved it. Tears streamed down my face. You've been proving it every day since Christmas, but this proved it beyond any doubt. You love me. You respect me. You value what I value. I'm sorry, he whispered. For Christmas Eve, for the divorce papers, for ever making you doubt that you were my equal, my partner, the most important person in my world. I know. I leaned down, pressing my forehead to his carefully. I forgive you, Preston, completely, because you've proven that you've changed, that you've learned. Not just with words, but with actions. Does this mean... He paused, gathering strength. Does this mean we get our second chance? Our real new beginning? Yes, I said simply. This means exactly that. When you're recovered, when you're strong again, we start fresh. Build the marriage we should have had from the beginning. Partners in everything. Equal in all ways. I love you, Penelope Castellano. His eyes were drifting closed, exhaustion and medication pulling him under. Love you so much. I love you too. I kissed his forehead gently. Rest now. I'll be here when you wake up. I'll always be here. Preston's recovery took months. Months of physical therapy, of learning to breathe properly again, of regaining strength. And through it all, I was beside him. Not as his nurse, but as his partner. We used the time to talk, really talk, about our childhoods, our fears, our dreams, about what we wanted our marriage to be, what we wanted our lives to be, about building something real and lasting on the foundation of respect and trust we'd finally established. My father visited often, bringing news of the business, of the families. The faction that had threatened him had been neutralized, their leaders facing justice from the Council of Families. And Vincent DeMarco made it clear to everyone that Preston Castellano had earned the DeMarcos' eternal loyalty and gratitude. "He gave me back my daughter," my father said one afternoon, sitting beside Preston's bed. "Not just by taking that bullet, but by becoming the man she deserved, the partner she needed." "I'm still learning," Preston admitted. "Still making mistakes, but I'm trying. Every day, I'm trying to be worthy of her." "That's all any of us can do," my father replied. "Keep trying. Keep choosing love and respect over pride and control. Keep remembering that the woman you married is your equal, not your possession." 6 months after that terrible night, Preston and I renewed our vows. Not because we had to, but because we wanted to. Wanted to make new promises to each other, based on who we'd become, rather than who we'd been. It was a small ceremony, just family and close friends. My father walked me down the aisle again, tears streaming down his face. And when I reached Preston, standing strong and healthy and looking at me like I was his entire world, I finally felt complete. I, Preston Castellano, take you, Penelope DeMarco Castellano, to be my partner in all things. I promise to trust you with my secrets, to value your counsel, to respect your strength. I promise to protect you not by controlling you, but by standing beside you. I promise to love you as my equal, my companion, my greatest ally. From this day forward, for all the days of our lives. I, Penelope DeMarco Castellano, take you, Preston Castellano, to be my partner in all things. I promise to trust you with my heart, to challenge you when needed, to support you always. I promise to be strong, not despite you, but alongside you. I promise to love you as my equal, my companion, my greatest strength. From this day forward, for all the days of our lives. When we kissed, it felt different from our first wedding, not innocent or naive, but earned, battle-tested, real. "No more tests," I murmured against his lips. "No more divorce papers. No more secrets," he agreed. "No more decisions made alone. Just us, together, facing whatever comes." "Together," I confirmed. "Always together." 1 year later, I stood in the nursery we'd prepared, watching Preston rock our daughter to sleep. Little Maria, named for his mother, slept peacefully in her father's arms, her tiny face the perfect blend of both of us. "You're good at that," I observed from the doorway. Preston looked up, his smile soft and full of wonder. "She's perfect, just like her mother." "She's perfect like both her parents," I corrected, moving to stand beside him. "Though let's hope she gets my strategic mind and your determination." "And your strength," he added, "your unwillingness to accept anything less than what you deserve." "That too." I leaned against him, watching our daughter sleep. "Do you ever think about how close we came to losing all this? If I hadn't signed those papers, if we hadn't figured out the Benedetti plot, if you hadn't taken that bullet, we'd have found our way back to each other eventually," Preston interrupted gently. "Because what we have, Penny, it's too strong to destroy. Even when we were at our worst, even when I was being an idiot and you were righteously furious, we loved each other. That love was always going to bring us back together." "Maybe," I conceded. "But I'm glad we didn't waste more time. Glad we learned these lessons when we did, painful as they were. Painful, but necessary." He carefully laid Maria in her crib, then pulled me close. Every difficult moment, every argument, every tear. They all brought us here. To this perfect family, this perfect partnership, this perfect love. Not perfect, I corrected. Real. Messy sometimes, challenging always, but real and honest and built on trust. Real, he agreed, kissing me softly. Real and ours, and exactly what we both needed. As we stood there, watching our daughter sleep, I thought about the journey we'd taken, from that terrible Christmas Eve to this perfect moment, from manipulation and control to partnership and trust, from hurt to healing to happiness. We'd almost lost each other, but instead, we'd found something better than what we'd had before. We'd found a love strong enough to weather storms, honest enough to speak hard truths, and resilient enough to rebuild when necessary. We'd found a real marriage. Not the fairy tale I'd imagined at 22, but something better. Something tested and proven and absolutely unbreakable. I love you, Preston whispered into the peaceful quiet of the nursery. I love you too, I replied. My partner, my equal, my love. Always and forever, he promised. Always and forever, I agreed. And this time, I knew beyond any doubt that he meant it.